and to today's webinar, which we've entitled Why Strong Deals Stall and How to Avoid Stakeholder Shutdown. Or to put it a little bit more crudely, how to avoid that horrible sinking feeling when you put your heart and soul into an opportunity, a proposal, only to discover that it doesn't happen for whatever reason. My name's Julian Hubble. I've been in the sharp end of sales for nigh on 40 years. And over that period of time, I've seen some great success. I've also faced this horrible feeling many, many times. Of late, towards the latter part of my corporate career, I started to avoid this happening. And I did that by implementing a sales framework that helps you avoid the mistakes and get to a situation where you're going to win most of the deals that you bid for. And today I'm sharing this for the first time. So the key points about what we're going to learn today and what we're going to cover is as follows. First of all, the webinar will take approximately 30 minutes. So please diary that and make sure hopefully you're going to be around for that period of time. This will be recorded and available for review for you. So by all means take notes, but there will be a copy of this available for streaming. If you're familiar with this webinar tool, you can use the chat box to ask questions as we go through it all, and I'll answer all those questions at the end. The information I'm sharing today is free to share with other people within your organisation and other business acquaintances that you may think would benefit from it. Finally, right at the end, I'd be very, very grateful if you complete a short survey to tell us what you think, so it'll help us create hopefully great webinars in the future. So the agenda is as follows. After the introductions, I'm going to talk about a concept called the complex sale and the orbit framework. What makes it a complex sale and why does the orbit framework work so well in those environments? And we're going to focus on two key areas that will significantly help this problem of stakeholder shutdown. One of them is truly understanding the business drivers that frame the decision. Secondly is identifying all the people that influence the decision, which I'm calling stakeholders, and how to deal with them. We'll then have a summary, some suggested actions, close, and a Q&A. So I'm going to start this webinar with a kind of statement, which is as follows, really. If you don't control the decision, somebody else will. Now, okay, I know what you're thinking. Clearly, a customer is going to decide. They're the ones that are going to sign the deal. But really, if you've got a really good handle on the business drivers behind why they want this particular solution and all the people that are involved, what their preferences are, how they see your proposition, and you can kind of tick all those things off, the decision becomes almost inevitable. It's going to go your way. And this I've seen many, many times. Most complex deals, and I mean those deals which are kind of perhaps a major opportunity, a major project you're trying to win, or maybe a key relationship, maybe a major customer that does business with you year in, year out, and you want to maximize the opportunity there. Most of those complex deals are not lost on product or price. They're lost because the real decision drivers, and potentially the real people that contribute to the decision, were never truly identified or understood. And the reason for this is manifold, really. First of all, decisions are often driven by forces you don't see in meetings. In other words, what they tell you that this particular project is all about, or this opportunity is all about, isn't necessarily what the forces are that's driving that decision. Also, many, many cases, decisions are influenced by people outside of your normal known contacts. And we're going to cover that in some depth as we kind of go through this. So if you can figure out the driving forces behind these decisions, and you can figure out the key people that you need to engage with, you're going to have a much, much better opportunity and a much better chance of winning that deal. The other comment I've got is lots of activity, running around, ringing people, chasing things up is probably worthwhile doing, but it doesn't necessarily mean lots of influence. And today is a proven process that will help you identify the true business drivers, not the assumed ones, not the ones that necessarily they tell you, but the true ones. Will also help you find all of the people that have that influence And by doing that, you will consistently deliver success. So let's make a start. First part of this is to have a definition behind the complex sale. And actually, I'm sure most of you on the webinar today will instinctively know what a complex deal is, but just to give it some form of definition, these tend to be the relatively high ticket purchases, perhaps the larger opportunities or the larger accounts, where you need to think carefully about how you position yourself to win it. A relatively high ticket purchase normally has some strategic impact, so you tend to have multiple contacts that will influence the sale, not just the technical evaluators, not just the commercial people, but maybe more senior people and individuals around that. A typical complex sale is often a proposition, a solution that's wrapped around a business problem. So it's not necessarily one cog that goes into the machine and works great. It's usually a combination of things. So product combinations, software, hardware, whatever. And maybe people are involved in this. The various people from your organization are involved to deliver that solution. You may be doing installation and ongoing support. You may be linked into some form of service level agreement or performance expectation. All of these four things come together to make it a complex sale, but of course either one of those could make it so as well. So hopefully all makes sense, all clearly understood. So before we go into some of the answers to this, I just want to explain my Orbit framework, sales framework here. And basically this covers three main areas of activity that are essential in creating a great trusted relationship with your customer. The first element is what we call the observe or the observation phase, where you need to make sure you've got really good, accurate information about business drivers and about people. You're doing things that constantly ask questions around this, so you can be absolutely consistent in what this company actually wants, and you can start mapping people together and figuring out how they all interrelate. So the observation phase is an essential phase of any long-term relationship or any project. We then have the align phase, which is essentially, now we kind of understand where the company is, who the key people are, what their ambitions are, and so on. We now have a role and a duty to try and align the proposition we've got to the requirements that customer has articulated. So there's an align phase as well, which obviously is probably the second part of when you're trying to close a project, or maybe the middle part of when you're trying to develop a long-term relationship with a major customer. And the final stage is the elevation, the elevate stage, where maybe you've won the deal, you understand the organization, you now want to drive more. Maybe you want to sell more services into this customer. Maybe you want to sell more products. Maybe there's other departments, other offices, other parts of this organization that you want to sell to as well. And essentially on each of these three areas, we have three sub areas of clarity, control, and consistency, as you can see. In other words, 9 aspects or 9 building blocks that build to make that a fantastic long-term trusted relationship that's going to deliver fantastic business for you. To put this in context, today we're going to focus on the observe clarity phase, and the rest will follow on future webinars. So if we look at the observe clarity phase, essentially this answers 2 questions. Number 1, what forces are shaping the decision? Not necessarily what the customer's telling you they want, what's kind of behind it? What are the forces behind it? And these we call business drivers. One of the most essential things to understand if you're putting a proposal to a customer. And then secondly, it's the second question it answers is who carries these forces internally? Now, it's obviously individuals. The individuals that influence we call stakeholders, and each stakeholder we categorize in terms of a role. In other words, what is it they are doing? What is their role with regard to hopefully concluding a successful sale for you? Understanding these 2 things is an essential foundation for successful sales. Now, to put this into context for everybody, on this particular webinar today, everybody is actually a reseller of IT services and products. So because of that, I've decided to use an IT project as an example. So we can look at what it looks like to start with, who the key people are, what we think the business drivers are, and then we can start folding in the Orbit framework to see how we can get more out of this. So hopefully these would be requirements you're very familiar with. It's a distribution company, a UK distribution company. They want Wi-Fi throughout their organisation with no not spots. They want the best and fastest tech, so they think Wi-Fi 7 might be the answer. They've got lots of different users on the net. Well, they will have lots of different users on the network at all times. So the solution's got to support multiple simultaneous connection. They want Wi-Fi to reach not only the warehouse but also the offices that adjoin the main building. They can identify at least 3 types of user: the office workers, the warehouse, and also guests. So they want some sub-networks involved in this. Very concerned about security. They want access limited to specific devices and authorized personnel that are working those devices. And of course, they got a budget to keep within. So hopefully those of you involved with Wi-Fi solutions or know something about them will recognize those as fairly classic requirements you might see on a typical opportunity. So to keep this contextual again, we've engaged with this organization and we've essentially got 3 people we are told to interface with. We've got Jenny, who is in purchasing, who presumably will deliver the order, give you the PO. So obviously somebody that we've got to be quite close to. We've got someone called Lukash, who is the technical authority on this. So this is the person that's going to be technically evaluating the solution and making sure it matches the requirements of the business. And you've got Elena in operations that's sort of overseeing the technical commercials to make sure together this produces a great solution for all the business. So 3 key contacts in an organization, probably quite typical of what you might see. So we're now going to kind of take a step back, look at these requirements, which I've called objectives, and start to think about what are the real business drivers behind this. You know, we want Wi-Fi throughout with no not spots. We want the best. We want lots of users, but why do we actually want it, and why is this so important? Critical question to ask. So the first reason might be operational efficiency. We want to do more with less. We want to do it faster with fewer errors. Obviously behind that, you've got a kind of cost saving. So maybe that not spots Wi-Fi throughout might be something that's going to give them operational efficiency. The other driver you might see there is business continuity. They want the warehouse to work seamlessly, as with all the office. Don't want any outages. So there again, maybe you're looking at the best latest tech, looking at Wi-Fi 7. Maybe Wi-Fi throughout the building with lots of access points might give you some business continuity as well. So that might be a key thing. The other thing that might be a business driver is scalability. You know, how do we make sure that this is not only suitable today, but suitable for the future? You know, growth without re-architecture. So looking for the best, fastest tech, the latest and greatest might be a kind of sign that this is a key issue or a key business driver. Risk reduction. You know, we're all very familiar with cyber hacks and problems that organizations have. This high security thing might all be about risk reduction and being concerned about what this might mean to their customers and stakeholders if something goes wrong in terms of security. And also cost predictability. They don't want to commit to something that's going to get more and more expensive the more they perhaps want. So no hidden future spend might be a key thing as well. And when you add all this thing together, it comes down to executive confidence. Can they really believe that your solution is going to hit their business drivers and it's a decision that they can absolutely stand behind? So we've just gone through a process there of thinking, okay, what are the key requirements and what are these business drivers? And of course, the question we have to ask ourselves is what really matters here and where's the truth? We might kind of assume that business continuity is a really, really important thing. And indeed it might be, but does the customer really, really see it that way? Is that something that's absolutely top of their agenda? And what about those requirements? Are they absolutely essential? Or is there some truth behind it that means maybe they don't really need Wi-Fi 7 another one would potentially be a much better solution. But inevitably, what it all typically all goes down to is those business drivers. So what we're going to talk about now is how we take these business drivers that we've kind of guessed might be key to this organisation and try and figure out what the true drivers are. And the first statement we're going to make is that the true drivers that really matter to this organisation leave a footprint. What I mean by that, you can see it in the organisation. You can see it from the people that you speak to. You can see it from all the messages that might go out to the external world. In other words, everybody's consciously or subconsciously aware of what these true drivers are. And obviously, part of your role as a potential supplier is to try and tease these things out. So where do you find them and how to check that they're real? Well, the first thing is, what are the executives actually saying? So how do we know what the executives are saying? Well, one thing is ask them great questions. And I've got a few that you may want to consider later in this presentation. And look for the external corporate messaging. What messaging gets repeated at all levels? What are the key themes that go through this organisation? And often what you'll find in an organisation, they're going to be in three modes. One mode is they're growing. In other words, things are great right now, but we want to crack a new market, or we want to grow our business, we want to gain more customers, whatever it might be. So things are fine and we want more. Or it could be restructuring. Maybe a particular way they're going hasn't worked. They've got to restructure to go a slightly different way. Or maybe they're in trouble. Things are not working out. They've got to change the way they do things. Maybe they've got to absolutely ramp up customer experience. That may be part of the reason they want an internal Wi-Fi network. All of these things are important to understand. And interestingly, in my experience, the companies that are in trouble, ironically, are the best companies to sell to. Because if you can show them a way of helping them getting out of trouble, they're going to really want your solution. Also, what are they posting on LinkedIn and other platforms? What is the company, what are individuals saying about the organisation that they're trying to do? And look at company messaging and also individual messaging. And places like LinkedIn are a great place to see what individuals are posting, those individuals you're talking to, and maybe those individuals you want to get to. Great source of solid gold information. Another good one is to figure out how they are rated by their customers. So, is Trustpilot and similar customer testimonial areas an area where you can see what their customers think about them. Customers don't think they're great. You can be sure the executive team are going to be very concerned about that, as are the investors and other partners. Kind of the golden rule here on business drivers is this: very easy to assume from a requirement specification that you know what those business drivers are. I've been proved wrong many times on that by me making assumptions. Key is to make sure that any business driver you perceive has a company source that confirms it really is. So it's not an assumption that you're making. And again, any assumption is something that must and always be avoided or challenged. Business drivers, incredibly important. So we talked about these 6 potential business drivers that we've assumed might be there. Here's a few questions to use that might just tease out the real ones. First question I love is, what happens operationally if connectivity drops during peak periods? What you're essentially doing here is putting the knife in and giving it a little twist. You're trying to magnify the pain that might occur if something goes wrong. That might be quite useful to hear what they say. It may really help your proposal. Second one, what future initiatives does this network need to support? Maybe you can flush out something that might happen next year that may not necessarily be in the requirement spec. That'd be a fantastic thing to fold into your proposal. Again, this is something that maybe you can do and possibly your competition don't do. So there's a great question to ask. What would be the impact of a security incident on customer confidence or confidence in the business? Come to that. Again, putting in the knife, giving it a twist, trying to magnify what might occur if that issue occurs. What part of the business feels the pain most when Wi-Fi underperforms? So where is the part of the organization that's really, really driving, we need a new Wi-Fi network? Find them, find what they think, and if you can get them on your side, that could be a fantastic lever to ultimately lead to a successful decision for you. And if this project is deemed a success in 12 months, what will be different? Again, you're asking people to think ahead to the future, focus on what needs to be different, but also it helps them focus on what might go wrong as well, which again might help you with your proposal. And finally, this is a question you can directly ask, particularly for the people that are accountable for it. What risks are you personally accountable for on the decision? This is a technique used by a lot of major companies. They call it FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. You know, when you're facing a competitor, are you absolutely sure this is going to work? What happens if it goes wrong? Are they going to look after you? And where are you going to be if that occurs? So there's 6 examples of questions. It's obviously contextual to this particular opportunity, but I hope you'll find useful and can potentially use. So to kind of summarize key actions on business drivers, number 1, recognize the criticality of identifying and clarifying these on day 1. I'll say that again, on day 1, right at the very start. So easy when you first find an opportunity, it's all exciting, you know what the budget is, there's a technical person to talk to, there's a requirement spec, you chuck your heart and soul into it, it's all looking great, and then 3/4 of the way down the sales process, you suddenly realize maybe you've not got a handle on all those business drivers, and when you try to ask that later on in the process, sometimes it's very difficult to get it. So get that established on day 1, it will really, really help you. Second thing, use all the resources available to identify these business drivers and make sure you have a source for them. And I've talked about posts, corporate messages, KPIs, etc. Ask great questions. Have at least 3 clear and source business driver to base your proposition on. So try and extract 3. Always refer these in written and verbal communications, and constantly cross-check your proposal is perceived to meet them with your customers. And always remember, it's the business drivers, not the spec of the objectives, that shape the decision. Yes, you've got to tick the boxes on the spec, of course, but kind of everybody does that. If you're tuned into those business drivers, that's what makes you get ahead of the pack and hopefully win that deal. So that's business drivers. We're now going to move on to the stakeholders. And again, as I said before, stakeholders are the people that influence the decision. If you kind of Google this or look at how, or go to ChatGPT, whatever it is, to figure out, how do you figure out roles, you'll see something similar to this, and actually sometimes an awful lot more. But in all my experience and everything I've worked for, 99% of all opportunities can be divided down to these 5 basic roles. First one is what we call the decision maker. Decision maker, often confused with someone that pretends to be a decision maker, like I'm the technical architect, I make the decisions, or I'm the purchasing guy that gives you the PO, I'm the decision maker. That's not the case. The decision maker is the individual that signs off the money and can say no after everybody else has said yes, and ironically, yes after everybody else has said no. Is it important to understand this individual and understand what their requirements are? You can be absolutely damn sure it is. And this is typically CEO, MD, or senior management in the organization. The second role is the evaluator. This is the individual or individuals that map the technical requirement of the organization against your supplier offering. They may well be able to say no, but they probably can't say yes and probably don't want to put the commitment behind it. Typically, they'll put forward 2 or 3 solutions with their comments and get somebody else to ultimately say yes. There's also the influencer. These are individuals that will be affected by the decision and therefore have a say, but probably can't say no and probably can't say yes. So these might be, in the case of this contextual example, the warehouse manager, the operations manager, warehouse staff, and other individuals. Procurement's kind of what it says it is. These guys pretend to be the decision maker, but in reality can only really influence. And the 5th one, which transcends all these roles, is somebody I've called a coach. This is the individual or individuals in the organisation that have a vested interest in supporting your proposal, and can be any of these roles. Really, really important. Even if this person is relatively low down in the organisation, they can help you get into the areas that can really influence it. So really important to understand those. So let's go back to the contextual example. We've got Jenny in purchasing, so clearly that individual is in procurement. We've got Lukash in technical. This person is an evaluator because they're evaluating your technical solution to what they want. You've got Elena in operations, who is an influencer. We don't at this stage know a decision maker, and we haven't got a coach either. So there's a couple of red flags. So actions for identifying stakeholders. Number one, identify who that decision maker is and blast through those individuals that pretend they are. Remember, who can say no after everybody else says yes? Who can say yes after everyone says no? You get that individual, you've got the decision maker. Try and identify a coach that is supportive to your proposition. You may have to work quite hard on that, but surely there's someone there that really likes you and you get on with. Use that person to find out more. Identify more influencers, the warehouse staff, the warehouse manager, even the vendor of the handheld stock devices. Remember, your Wi-Fi is connecting to something quite strategic to the organisation. It may well be the vendor of those devices could have a say on it as well. And then identify more evaluators as well. Who does Lukash work for? How do they see it? How do they see the proposal? And here's a kind of a little matrix that you might find useful to put together that I've used on many occasions. You can see here we've got the name of the individual, we've got their title, and we've got their role. I'm also going to add here, as a way of how to navigate your way through this opportunity, to what degree do they support the project? Okay, so the company may have decided this is a really important project, but individuals may or may not be positive. Some individual, like the operations manager, may think this is the last thing I want to do. I've got more enough on my plate. The last I think is a wretched project on Wi-Fi. So in this situation here, I've kind of got Jenny is neutral on this on the project. Lukash massively support it. Can't wait to get new tech in. Elena really can't be bothered with this and is slightly negative towards it. And then how do they feel with regard to your proposition? Are they neutral? Are they positive? Or are they negative towards it? And what I've kind of got down here in terms of your next best actions is, if someone's negative, you need to work a plan to try and make them neutral. If someone's neutral, you need to try and work a plan to make them positive. And if they're positive, what can we do and how can we help them leverage that influence on other stakeholders? So to kind of finalize this webinar today and to kind of pull this all together, I'll start with that statement I made right at the very beginning. If you don't control the decision, somebody else will. And to help you have control over the decision, we've got to nail those business drivers and all those stakeholders. So we've covered the importance of identifying the business drivers that frame the decision. I've given you some tactics that you can use to tease out the ones that really, truly matter. We've talked about the stakeholders, the people you typically see to start with, and then our ways of identifying who's missing, how to find them, and then figure out how they're aligned to your proposition and how to make them slightly more positive in terms of the overall thing. So in terms of actions, this is all free for you guys to use. This is what I recommend that you do as a business. So number one, select an account that meets the complex sale criteria. Don't pick a small one, pick your biggest customer, pick your biggest project, and use that as a kind of example. Run the business driver identification process through this, identify, cross-check, and confirm at least 3 business drivers that have confirmed sources. Identify your key points of contact, select their role in the decision-making process. Then identify all the risk factors. What business drivers are you missing? Are you sure they're right? Have you checked them? What roles are missing? And how positive are the individuals and roles to your proposition? Get an action plan together, fill in the gaps, brainstorm internally, and improve the proposition support behind your proposal. Then map your proposition and frame your conversations against all those key business drivers. So we hope you find that useful. I think we're now pretty much half an hour, so I hope you find that useful. I'm pretty much according to time. Free for you to use. We really welcome your feedback. So once you come off the webinar, please complete that questionnaire and let us know how you think. If you apply this consistently to your sales engagement process, you will soon see the following things. Number one, some deals you might qualify out, decide not to bid. Yeah, sometimes no deal is the best deal. You go through this process, you might figure out very early on in the stage that actually we're not very well aligned to this particular opportunity. Don't waste your time. Don't spend months going through it only to discover you came second. Focus on the ones you can win. This will give you much better control and predictability in your sales funnel. So when you're looking at what the opportunity is like over the coming months, you can be much more sure about what's going to come in and what's going to close, obviously helping your P&L. This will give you more wins, more profitability, and much better customers that really believe you truly understand their business. And finally, your competition will be wondering where they all went wrong, which is, I guess, the icing on the cake there. So for final thoughts, I've used a picture here of a famous comedian. Honestly, I'm not sure whether this individual is still alive. Apologies if you are, Frank, but this is Frank Carson, very popular Northern Irish comedian. And he had a great catchphrase. I don't know whether you can think of what it is or remember what it is. So after three, it's the way I tell him. I'm not going to try and butcher a Northern Irish accent here. But why have I put this up? Well, I think this has kind of great context to what we've just kind of spoken about. A great joke delivered by Frank Carson with everybody rolling on the floor hilariously. You get somebody else, maybe another comedian, says the same words, tries to deliver it in exactly the same way, and nobody laughs. And so much about what I've talked about is certainly following the process. It's all about also how an individual frames this within their personality to get the most from that customer. And this is where potentially I can help you. So take this information, apply it to your business, use all these free resources. I've got no doubt you'll see a marked improvement. However, if you'd like to really fine tune this and streamline this in your organization, I can offer you on a commercial basis 3 different ways I can help. The first one is helping you define your sales engagement model. So lots of deals, things going on. How do you kind of put it all together? How do you make sure all of your team are applying the same sort of framework? Well, partly to do with CRM and reporting tools, also partly with process. I can do a short workshop, have a look at what you're doing and make some great recommendations that will improve that process and make sure you're working on the deals that you're really going to win, not the ones that you're going to lose, and obviously close them as well. Also for sales teams and sales managers, maybe you've got great sales guys out there that perhaps need mentoring and assisting on this new framework, or maybe you've got a sales manager that needs some help in driving their sales teams. Again, I offer individual sales team and sales manager mentoring to assist in your business. And finally, I have a structured strategic account management training course, which takes you through the Orbit sales framework. It runs over 3 months and can go beyond that as well, depending on the needs of the customer. This goes through in great detail the observe, align, and elevate. Gets your sales guys working on it, ensures they're doing it day in, day out, massively improving their ability to sell and also delivering great value for your organization. By doing this commercially with me, the return will be manyfold on the investment that you'd make. So thank you very much for your attention. I really do hope you found that useful. Please do fill in the questionnaire. And I'm just going to now go through and see if there's any questions that anybody's asked that I might be able to respond to. No, I can't see any questions. So let me thank you very much for your attention. And I hope to see you on a webinar sometime soon. Thank you very much and goodbye.